Welcome, welcome. High fives to all my subscribers and a subtle, yet directed nod to anyone bored enough to watch my trash who is yet to subscribe. In regards to my trash, I've decided to step it up a bit. As my regular listeners will know, I've been trying to get some chats going on. After too many whiskeys, having just had my Twitter cherry popped, I decided to make some vague waving movements over a Ritz. I tilted back my head and called out to our levitating linguini lord for a messenger. I don't need to tell you that I was immediately rewarded. Our sticky starch savior sent me an actual professor who does not yet know how crazy I am to have a bit of a chat. It is with great pleasure, excitement, and anticipation to learn and grow, basically to be shown completely wrong, that I introduce Professor Flynn. In a style that might be better suited to my background. In this corner, hailing from places unknown with a record of idiocy, the mass terror, the inarticulate imbecile, the one, the only, Afidemist. And in the other corner, the champ, the professional prof, the provider of proofs, the arbiter of arguments, the origin of all legends ever told, Professor Flynn! Flynn. Roll the damn intro. Let's get this on. You were mentioning your atheism, and I guess you've almost answered the question, but I want to dig in a little bit. How would you describe or define your atheism?
Well, this is why I would say, maybe as I was saying what I said a few minutes ago, I was sort of self-edited in my brain, and I think in a way I've answered my own question, which I hope will answer yours. So I said just a few minutes ago, I am not sure whether I'm an atheist or an anti-theist.
Can you define?
But now I realize, I realize that I'm both.
Oh, okay.
So let's do the anti-theist part. I do not believe that theistic dogma is a good pathway to truth or to moral conduct. So I am against religion.
Is the word theist in that important? So, I mean, yeah.
Right, yes.
But what if we took the word theist out? Sorry, I've got a lot of hands.
It wouldn't be the same. And here's why.
Okay.
We could say anti-religion. And some people say that, the old thing, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. It's more than being against religions, it's being against the belief in religions. That's why I would say anti-theist. I'm also an atheist in the most common, garden variety sense. I do not believe God claims.
I got you. What if I don't know what the example is. This is the fun of doing them live. What if flat earthers always woke up in the morning and walked around the block 5 times? That was part of their, I don't know, what they had to do. Would there be a substantial difference? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, isn't all dogma bad?
Yes.
Then is the theist label on here really important? I mean, it is. I agree with you. Because they do bad things, or things that I think are bad at the very least. But I think what you're going to find during this conversation, perhaps I'm completely wrong, is I'm going to try to take your arguments against Christianity perhaps, or theism, and broaden the context. Because I think, and maybe this is where my atheism comes from or has gone, I think the problems that we see in these sorts of conversations, like theism, antitheism, atheism, are actually the exact same sorts of problems we see everywhere. But
I agree.
That's why I'm bringing it up, I guess. So when you say atheist, do you mean that you have a positive claim that no God exists? What do you mean exactly by atheist?
My atheism is a response to the claim that there is not just evidence, but proof that gods exist. So I'm not making a positive claim. I am saying that I have heard the claim of theists and found it wanting. That I don't, well, I won't pursue that. But I just want to say, because I think your question about dogma is a really, really, really important question, and I agree with you completely. And in fact, my Twitter banner for quite some time was a play on, a beware of dog sign, and it was beware of dogma.
I like it.
And as I sometimes say to my to one of my colleagues, I am dogmatically opposed to dogma.
I like it.
And I've said this, and I'm going to explain why that's important, but then why I narrow it. So, I have, in recent days, especially in the aftermath of the shooting in Texas, I have been, and I'd been saying this I didn't know the shooting was going to happen, obviously, but in the days leading up to that, I've been saying loud and proud on Twitter that the United States isn't in danger of becoming a theocracy. It is a theocracy. But I mean that in the sense, not that it's a Christian evangelical theocracy, although it might largely be. It's really can you just say a theocracy of dogma, in that there are certain, as there are in religions, there are sacred texts and people, this sort of thing. So there's the sacred text, for instance, of the Second Amendment. There's the worship at the altar of Mammon, as it says in the Bible. Mm-hmm. There's the absolute worship of guns. So but the problem for me is, look, just attacking dogma, you will see if you look at my Twitter feed, I do two things. I attack theism and sometimes theists, particularly Christian theists, because I think they're the group I'm more familiar with, and that I think are really posing a clear and present danger that Islam could not begin to pose. What was I going to say? So it is blah, blah, blah. So in my Twitter timeline, you'll see me going after theism and going after right-wing American politicians. And if you draw the Venn diagram of those two things, and we know this, right, of right-wing and Christian evangelical and Christian apologists, that Venn diagram is like one color.
I want to take a couple steps back. Sorry for interrupting. I've understood and I haven't disagreed, but I'm really interested in this question and I don't want to lose it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is great. I love this.
You were mentioning about America being a theocracy, and you were then mentioning that not really in a religious sense, but perhaps in a dogma sense or maybe an ideology sense, certainly not a word that you used. The question is going to be something similar to a lot of theists in debates and arguments point out atheistic atrocities by pointing, I'm not sure why I pronounced it that way, by pointing at like Pol Pot, for example.
Yeah, and I was going to mention this a minute ago. Keep going.
Well, actually, that's the question. Could you speak to any similarities you see between what theists have called historical examples of atheistic murder, mass murder, genocide, whatever, and what you're now mentioning you're seeing as America as a theocracy? Is there a connection there?
It's the same shit in different pots, in different Pol Pots, if you will. So people talk about, the classics are Pol Pot or Stalin.
Sure.
Were they atheists? Sure. Hitler, not so clear, but certainly Pol Pot and Stalin, they were atheists. But they appealed to their citizens' willingness to give themselves over to dogma in a way that is indistinguishable, except for some of its minutiae, from the way that religions and churches appeal to their citizens or their congregations' desire to believe, right? To believe in something bigger than them, right? And it's Freud talked about this in Future of Illusion. It's been said, this is not original thinking on my part. People want to believe things. What's the easiest way to get this is something that Sam Harris has said. I'm sure people have said before him. If you want to get someone to do something horrible, they have to believe something.
Yeah.
And I would say they have to believe in something. So, Pol Pot's dogma, of course, it's different from any variety of Christian dogma that I'm aware of. But it plays upon, takes advantage of, manipulates the same instincts of our, we mere mammals, and often uses them to bad ends. It's authoritarianism at the end of the day. It's just, do you want, the Vatican version of authoritarianism, or do you want Stalin's version? Take your pick.
It might be tribalism at the end of the day as well. When you're promoting an idea that you want your nation to follow, that excludes the other I got too many hands again. That excludes the other nations. Yeah, these are topics that I always talk about. You were talking, and sorry for interrupting, about the connection that you see between the right and religious fundamentalists and stuff. If you want to continue, please do. My next question was going to be, do you see any common problems with atheists online or that you interact with that you'd like to point out? So I guess, take your pick. Which one are you shooting at?
Look, I think that if anyone watching, listening to this doesn't see the overlap between particularly Christian evangelicalism and right-wing politics, there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to convince them. So, it's to me, it's evident. I don't know how you can argue against it. It is, to me, apparent. Why beat a dead horse?
Any idea about the cause?
I'm going to decline. But what was the second?
Any idea about the cause of that connection? I mean, certainly the connection is there. There's a correlation, no doubt about it. There might be causation.
You know what? It's the connection between all such dogmas, I think. And this is going to sound horrible, but I've said it on Twitter plenty. I'll put it this way. In fact, I was asked this just today when I was accusing a certain person of being intellectually dishonest, and some Twitter theist who I'd never, I think, encountered, replied with something to the effect of, and we've all heard this before, assuming that this person was being dishonest, what in your worldview makes that objectionable?
Oof.
And I replied and said, here's the thing. I have learned, this is learned behavior, I have learned that being honest is a good thing. I didn't learn that from a Bible. I don't have a scriptural foundation for that learned belief and behavior, that lying is bad. It's something I learned. And here's the difference between me. I said this to the person. Here's the difference between me and you. I'm actually morally superior to you because I can think about, perform the moral calculus necessary to act morally in the world without making reference to anything, any ancient text. So I actually think about my behavior and whether it's good or bad. Whereas theists like this chump, they don't have to think about it anymore. And this actually is an answer to your question. He doesn't have to think about it. No. He just does what the book tells him.
It's easy.
That isn't morality, as I said to him. Dogs can be trained to not jump up on the couch. They don't understand why. They don't understand why it's wrong, but they can learn.
I still salivate every time I hear a bell. I got you. Yeah.
It is. It's Pavlov's dog. But any, I think, dogma becomes a crutch. And it does have to do with tribalism. I agree 1,000,000%. You don't even have to go to dogma. You can look at research on street gangs, for instance.
Good example.
People break into street gangs or get broken into street gangs because they want to belong to something. The research it's 100% clear on this. Part of that, forming that tribe, adopting that group identity, is doing as they do and not thinking critically about what it is that you're doing.
I would love to pause you there.
That's what dogma does.
I would love to pause you there with a question that I don't want you to answer yet. I want to put it in the latter part. But just off the top of my head, as you're saying this, people, I'm not telling you anything, it's just an intro to the question, I guess. People have been saying the police have issues for years and years. And, obviously there's riots and obvious issues with the police. Do you think that what you are now talking about has something to do with, or could potentially have some influence on, the police acting, in some instances, in ways that we think are effing horrible? But I don't actually want you to answer that question yet. I want to get back to that. I think it is an important question, but I'm probably wrong. Yeah. The question, we'll kind of maybe finish off this atheism bit, is if you could change one thing about atheists, what is the problem that atheists have?
Oh yes, you asked that and I got on a tangent.
No, you're good.
So I'm going to answer it. There are a few things that I would criticize about atheists. I think I'm actually, something of a libertine, but I think that there is a libertine streak in contemporary atheism that I consider to be nasty and immoral. Yeah, immoral.
Can you define libertine for me, please?
So a libertine is a person who sort of lives in the moment for the pleasure of the senses, right?
Hedonism?
I want to get drunk and have sex with that woman. That's what I'm doing. And we've all heard the stories. We've heard the Lawrence Krauss stories. We've heard the Michael Shermer stories. These things are circulating around a lot. And, maybe some of them are, not completely factually accurate. But man, there's a whole lot of smoke. It's hard not to believe that there's some fire there. Is that good evidence? No. But I think, as I view the landscape, I see that, and that concerns me to some extent. Because I think that when any person expresses their libertinism without thought for others, this is like the do unto your neighbors you do unto yourself thing. Anyone who does that, atheist or not, who acts without consideration of the effects of their action on other, I would claim, isn't doing the right thing. I think it's worse for atheists because atheists really only rally around one idea, one issue. I wouldn't even call it an ideology. It's that we don't believe God claims.
I agree with you. It's not an ideology. Yes.
It's not. So, but even to say things like, well, all atheists believe in evolution. I don't know that that's true.
I know for a fact it's not.
It's not, right?
Yeah.
But one thing that I think atheists share largely is a healthy skepticism.
Hopefully.
And hopefully, and I think virtually every atheist would claim to be, if not like a capital S skeptic, then at least to be skeptical, right?
But doesn't everybody, right? I'm a critical thinker. Right. I'm skeptical.
Yeah, but
right.
But atheists have a special responsibility to be skeptical because they claim it.
Okay.
And they have to include in their skepticism being skeptical of their own behavior.
I gotcha.
That is a problem for me in what I see of of contemporary atheism.